Hi everyone. So I started with the calendar so we can kind of talk real quick about the unit, what it looks like. Just a reminder, we're going to be using the book like half the time, especially in the beginning we use it a lot. So the first couple of lessons will be out of the book. You can see Thursday, Friday, and then we have a lesson on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So we have 6 consecutive lessons, and then we'll do a quiz review next Friday. And then we'll have a lesson on Monday. That way we're not quizzing on a shortened period. And then we'll quiz on Tuesday. Okay, it'll give you a little bit more time with the quiz review, but the material that we cover on this day will not be covered on the quiz. Okay, we have a couple more lessons, 3 more, and then we'll do a review of everything to that point. We'll do 2 more lessons, and then that's it, and we'll do the test review. You can see we have 2 days on the test review, so the test would be the following Monday, but I don't want to test on a Monday short schedule. So we'll work on final exam review stuff that day, and then you can work on the test review for homework, and then your test will be on Tuesday. So you actually get an extra day for working on your test review. We'll spend 2 days working on our final exam review, and then Friday is a Teacher Institute day, so you guys will not be here, so you guys have a nice 4-day weekend, because you'll have Monday off for Memorial Day, and then you will come back and have finals on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in May. Alright, so it's going to go by quick. Alright, the first day is spent talking a lot about definitions and words, so it's a lot of writing for you guys. I kind of typed a lot of it out just so that you didn't have to deal with my handwriting while writing on the screen. So you're going to need to pause often in here. The video might look like it's not very short in terms of time, because I'm just going to kind of talk through all of it, but you're going to have to pause and make sure that you write everything down, so it's going to take you a lot longer than what it looks like. Okay? We're going to discuss in this lesson 3 different types of gathering data. Specifically 3, there's many. We're just going to talk about 3, and we're going to discuss the most appropriate time to use each of the 3. Okay, so here's some background about statistics, or why we are doing this lesson or this unit. It says data is vital to every aspect of how we live today. From commerce to industry, the internet to agriculture, politics to publicity, data is constantly being gathered. It's being analyzed, it's being applied, and it's being reported. Statistics is a branch of mathematics that is focused on how to collect data, how to organize that data, how to analyze that data, and how to interpret the information from the data that's being gathered. Okay? There are many ways to gather data or numbers in context. The most appropriate method for gathering data can vary based on the data that is desired, the situation, or the purpose of the study. In this lesson, we will discuss methods of collecting data, 3 of them, and when each method is most appropriate. Okay? So that kind of gives you just a background on why we're doing what we're doing today. These are in your book for you guys. Just definitions. It might be a good place for you guys to go look. I think I do a pretty good job of hitting any definition that we need throughout our notes, but just in case you need to see it, there are definitions here. There's a lot of them, so it might be kind of nice to look through. It's ones that they've, the book has specifically picked out that have to do with the lesson. Okay. Alright, so we're going to start with the warm-up, which is 131, so find that page. This says, while standing in line at an amusement park with a group of friends, you pose the following question. What is the best way to become healthier? Each friend gives a different answer. So ideally in class I would have asked you guys what your answers were, and we would have compiled a list. This is the list that I had from last year from my students, so I figured I would just keep it the same. Oops. So some of their answers were these, so if you could write these down. So some of their questions were, in order to become healthier, or the best way to become healthy, they said to exercise, eat less fat, drink more water, sleep more, eat less empty calories, have more movement, and have less pop or soda that you're drinking. Okay, so again, pause and make sure that you write all of those down. The next part says list some ways you could gather information to answer this question. So again, here's what I had from last year for what students said. They said that you could ask other people. You could ask somebody who has personal experience getting healthy, losing weight. You can always Google it. gosh. You can always Google it and read some articles, some scholarly articles. You could get a trainer, or you could ask a trainer. You could ask a doctor. The nice thing about a trainer and a doctor is that you'd be asking an expert in the field, and not just people who think that they know, but somebody whose job is actually to help people become healthier. Okay, so again, pause and write that down. And then, how can you scientifically determine which friend has given you the best response? Obviously, it's a hard thing to answer and who gives you the best response, because it's probably specific to the person, but here are some options. You could speak to someone who has experienced success, so somebody who maybe has lost weight, and what they did and how they became healthier, what worked for them. You could conduct a survey, so you could give surveys to people and then kind of see what commonalities there are between. You could find or use proven stats. I'm sure there's always stats of things that you can find on the internet. And you could also perform an experiment. Okay? So again, pause anywhere you need to, write all that down. And then we're going to go and we're going to actually do a lot of writing right now. So find a blank page in your book. Something, around where you were just at. There should be a blank page on the next page. Okay, so this is what all of our notes are about. So there are 3 ways to collect data. The 3 ways that we are going to be talking about are an observational study, a survey, full or sample, and an experiment. Okay, so copy that down. And then I'm going to go into detail about each of these. An observational study is a study in which all data, including observations and measurements, are recorded in a way that does not change, I would underline or highlight that does not change the subject that is being measured or studied. So an observational study means that you are observing. You are not interacting, you're not changing, you're observing and watching. That's it. Okay? Once you have that written down, a survey is a study of particular qualities or attributes of items of people of interest to a researcher. Okay, so we survey people because it's something of interest that we want to know about. So, like I really have no interest in how to bake cupcakes, so I wouldn't give a survey on it. It's of no interest to me. So, that type of thing. Okay? Sample survey is pretty much what we're going to talk about. A sample survey is the same idea, but it's used for large populations, and it's carried out using a sampling method so that only a portion of the population is surveyed rather than the whole population. So meaning, like, if we want to give a survey out to down or south, there's almost 2,800 students here. We don't necessarily need to give it to all 2,800 students. We could maybe give it to a sample of 100 students. Okay, but then the next part comes into play, because if we're going to give it only to a sample of students, we want it to be reliable. So we want it to be designed to produce reliable conclusions. And in order to be reliable, it must represent the whole population. Meaning that we wouldn't want to say, we want to ask students how they feel about, how they feel about prom being on I don't even know what day prom is, on a Saturday, and then ask 100 people, but the majority of them are freshmen. Freshmen, it's not really a good, reliable survey, because freshmen, it doesn't really even pertain to them for a couple more years, so that type of thing. So you'd want to randomly pick people, some freshmen, some sophomores, some juniors, some seniors, that type of thing. Okay? It must also have neutral questions, meaning that they're asked in a way that does not lead the response toward one particular answer or question of an issue. So we'll get to talking about that in sections coming up, about how to make sure that the question doesn't lead or make you think of an answer just by the wording of it. Okay? And then if you have more room, you have to write about experiment, otherwise find another blank page. Your third type of gathering information is an experiment, which is a process or action that has observable results called outcomes. So you should be doing this in your science class, or have seen it in science. Okay. This is where participants are intentionally subjected to some process, an action, or substance, and where they are deliberately offering participants incentives, money, free products, something like that. New medicines is pretty common for experiments. You'll see that a lot on TV. But in doing this, then you'll have to have a placebo, which we use as a control, which again you should see in your science class. Okay, so pause this if you need to. I know it takes you guys a lot longer to write this down than it does for me to read it. Once you are done writing it down, then let's move on. Each of these examples are going to walk us through determining which is the best type of method to gather data. So example 1 says, Spirit Week is approaching and the Student Council wants more students to participate in the festivities by dressing up. Student Council members plan to collect data on the most popular dress-up themes for the days of Spirit Week by asking other students what their favorite themes are. Since the Student Council doesn't have much time or funding, members will not be able to talk to every student. Okay, so they're not talking to the entire population. It also says that funding comes into place, that they can't give them any incentives for, giving their feedback either. What method of data gathering will most closely match what the Student Council is trying to accomplish? So in this one, we're going to kind of, take all the steps that the book likes to step out. It says, consider the methods of data collection described in this lesson. So here are your 3 methods, so write all 3 of them down. So we're deciding which of these 3 is most appropriate. Does it seem like it would be a good observational study, an experiment, or a sample survey? Okay. The next part says to recall the distinguishing characteristics of each method, meaning like what would differentiate between the 3. Okay, and then, sorry, I know it's a lot of writing, but such as statistics. Okay, so write this out. An observational study is where a researcher observes the subject without interacting or disturbing the subject. They're just watching. Okay. An experiment is where participants are intentionally subjected to a process, action, or a substance. And a survey or a sample survey is of interest to the researcher, and it is a sample, meaning it's a portion of the larger population, meaning you have a lot of people, you don't have time or the resources to hit all those people. Okay, so we should start to see maybe what this one fits. Okay, when you are done with that, we want to evaluate the situation described in the problem to determine the purpose and characteristics of the required data. And then here's what I wrote down, which are some notes based off of what they said. They want to determine the most popular themes. They want to use data to increase participation. They want to ask students questions. And they do not have much time or money. So these were all things that were stated up above. Okay, based off of this, we should be able to determine that the most appropriate method, I don't have it, I have to write, that the most appropriate method is, I'm going to say therefore, actually not therefore, is a sample survey. Okay, a sample survey, it's not an observation because they want to talk to people, and that's not observing. They don't have any money or they don't have money to offer incentives, so it cannot be experiment. And they don't have much time, which means that they don't have time to talk to everybody or poll everybody, so it would be a sample survey, a sample of the entire population. Okay, so now let's talk about the next couple examples, and we're going to see which ones these fit for gathering data. Example 2 says, the Student Council successfully gathered data and used it to choose the themes for each day of Spirit Week. But now that Spirit Week is finally here, the council members need to know how each theme affects student participation. So meaning, did it actually increase or did it decrease participation? Or did it stay the same? They plan to sit in front of the cafeteria during lunch each day of Spirit Week to count the number of students dressed up for the day's theme. What method of data gathering most closely matches this plan? Okay, so this is the important part that I would highlight or underline. They plan to sit in front of the cafeteria during lunch each day to count the number of students dressed up for the day's theme. So notice nowhere in there did it say that they were going to interact with them. Nowhere in there did it say that they were going to entice them. They're just counting. Okay, so we should have an idea of what that means. I made some notes here that I would write down if I were you, just to kind of point out why it's not certain things. Okay, so nowhere in there did they say they were giving any particular treatment to students, so it's not an experiment. Okay, so that's what that means. Nowhere in here did they say that they would be interacting with students. Okay, so they're not interacting. And because they're not interacting is why, they're not interacting with students, which is why then we would say that this is an observational study. So because they're not interacting with students, it's not a survey. They're just observing, they're counting. So it's an observational study. Okay. So again, pause where you need to, copy any of that down. Example 3. Let's see. Sorry. All right, example 3 says, to encourage as many students as possible to dress up for the final day of Spirit Week, the Student Council is giving away raffle tickets donated by local businesses. So right there, that should kind of throw a red flag in there that's an incentive. Highlight that. To encourage, they're going to dress up. The Student Council is giving away raffle tickets. Every student who dresses up will get a free raffle ticket. Council members will gather data on how many students participate on the last day of Spirit Week and compare that information with the data they have gathered from their observational study on dress-up participation for other Spirit days of the week. What method of data gathering will most closely match what the Student Council is trying to accomplish with the raffle prizes? Okay, so again, it's that idea of with the raffle prizes. So here's some notes that I made. Okay, you don't necessarily need to make these notes, but these are things that you should be thinking, so write them down for notes purposes. Okay, they have to interact with students to give raffle tickets. So the fact that they have to interact means it cannot be an observational study. Okay, so those are things that we should be recognizing. They are not giving a survey. Nowhere in here did it say that they were giving a survey, so obviously that takes that out, which means that it has to be an experiment. They're interacting, okay, they're giving raffle tickets, they're enticing a response. Okay. And then example 4. So again, pause where you need to. Example 4 says, Mrs. Weber, the school nurse, keeps a log of all symptoms reported by students. Lately, there has been a marked increase in the number of students coming to the office complaining of back pain. After researching factors that lead to back pain in adolescents, Mrs. Weber found heavy backpacks have led to injuries in other schools. The American Academy of Pediatrics, I don't know if that's real, records that students' backpacks recommends that students' backpacks weigh no more than 10 to 20% of the student's weight. Mrs. Weber would like to find out the average weight of a backpack in her school. Okay, so some of the things that you should be reading in here. Okay, so she wants to figure out the average weight of a backpack. Well, if you think about your 3 methods, an observational study means that she would have to watch, she cannot interact. But part of her job is that she has to interact with kids, so that kind of gets rid of that one. But also, there's no way that she can determine the average weight of a backpack just by looking at a student, right? Like, she can't look at a backpack and say, oh, that looks like 10 pounds, and that student looks like 130 pounds. So that's that, this is a certain percentage of their body weight. Okay, so an observational study is just not possible. You can't figure these things out by just observing. And the second that you begin to interact, it's not an observational study. Okay, so that's what I wrote here. She's not, she needs to interact with students for her job, but she would also have to interact with them to obtain what their backpack weighs and what they weigh. Okay, she's not trying to change the outcome. Right. So an experiment is where you're trying to, entice, change outcomes. She's not trying to change it. She just wants to know what the average weight is. Okay, maybe there will be follow-up to it, but for right now, that's it. That's all she wants. Okay, so it has to be a sample survey because she needs their feedback. She needs to know, how heavy is she'd probably ask questions like, how heavy is your backpack? How much do you weigh? So that way she can then figure out the percentage of the backpack compared to their weight. And a sample, because she doesn't need to ask everybody. She just needs to ask, a small portion of the people or a portion of the people. Okay, so out of your 3 methods, again, observational study doesn't make sense. Experiment, she's not trying to change it. An experiment tries to change. Like at the student council when they offered raffle tickets because they wanted more participation, so that enticing of a prize gets them to have more outcomes. Okay, so those are your 3 methods. In your homework, which is whatever this page is, 131. You're going to do numbers 1 through 10, and in them you are going to let's see. Explain your reasoning on whether it's a sample survey, an experiment, or an observational study. Okay, so just like the notes. And then 4 through 9, you're going to identify which method could be used to accomplish the results given that situation. Okay. In some cases, you have to read into a little bit what they're saying, but in some cases, you want to be very careful that you don't read too much into what they're saying, and that you're reading exactly what they say. So, but we'll talk about it. Read through it. The answers are on Google Drive. You do not need to go to the back of the book, but you can go to the back of the book. I make no promises that they're the right answers. I'm sure there's mistakes somewhere in there. I think there's less mistakes with my answer key. Plus, I try to give some explanations of each as well. Okay? Great. Then I will see you guys tomorrow. Make sure you bring your books. Thank you.